Happy Monday, my Liberty kitty cats. And for those of you that heard my interview with Vin Armani 2 weeks ago, you know that he has some advice for those here in the Liberty movement that are located in the United States. And that advice is to get your shit and go. And I quote, to get your shit and go. It's becoming very clear to anyone paying attention that political dissidents are going to have a hard time here in the U.S. And that's why it's time to seriously consider leaving the United States. That is a simple fact, my friends. And if you are like one of the many, many people who are now seriously considering leaving the U.S., you have got to check out the amazing resource that is the Expat Money Show, hosted by my friend Mikkel Thorup. If you know that taxation is theft and you're sick of paying so much damn money to support the war machine every year, this is the show for you. If you see the writing on the wall, if you see the creeping totalitarianism that is overtaking this country, this is the show for you. Mikkel helps provide you with all of the tools you need to lower your tax burden and find more freedom outside the United States. You want to check it out by searching for the Expat Money Show on your favorite podcatcher, or just head over to expatmoneyshow.com. I'd also like to invite you to a Facebook group, a Facebook forum that I actually help moderate. That is the Expat Money Forum. You can find that over at expatmoneyshow.com/forum.
Welcome to the Lines of Liberty podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Claire.
My guest today is the chair of the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles, but she is not content to stop there, my friends. She has announced that she is now seeking the chairmanship of the National Libertarian Party. I'm so very pleased to welcome my friend Angela McArdle. Angela, are you ready to roar?
Meow.
A meow is actually a low-level roar. It is a type of roar, I believe, technically speaking.
I'm ready to roar, man. Let's do it.
Awesome, Angela, and it's great having you on here. Now, you've been on the Greater Lions of Liberty podcast in some way, shape, or form before. You were on with Brian McWilliams last year on Electric Liberty Land, and you also were part of a debate about whether the Libertarian Party should even exist late last year. But this is your first time getting the proper Lions of Liberty Marc Claire interview treatment. So, you know what we have to do, Angela? What I always need to get to the bottom of when I do these interviews with someone for the first time is how did this all start for you? What is the Angela McArdle libertarian origin story?
Oh, man. Well, it's sort of like an act in, it's a play in 3 acts, and I don't think any of them are particularly that interesting or compelling, but I do think that it's good for people to know about my background. So I grew up, in a conservative Christian home in Texas, a very stereotypical story, I think. I moved to California as a teenager and met some people who were libertarian, like in the music scene. And I just had a conversation with a guy one time. He was like an older rocker guy in the community that we all respected. And he was telling me when I said that I was a conservative, but I didn't think that, like the war on drugs was a good idea. I don't think my friends should go to jail for smoking weed. And that I didn't really care about, gay marriage. And I didn't understand why people were upset about it. Like, shouldn't gay people just get married? Like, if conservatives want them to be like conservative gays or something, like, who cares? And he said, well, I think you sound more like a libertarian. And I thought, oh, cool. Then I'm a libertarian. I'd heard that word before. It sounded good to me. So I just stuck with that, and I got a little bit more red-pilled when I read The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffith.
And that is quite a deep dive, that read. That is not a quick sit down for an hour and have a casual read. That's a big one to get into, Angela.
That one really imploded my worldview and got me kind of, borderline obsessed with central banking, the Federal Reserve, the whole thing. I thought, wow, like, everything I know is a lie. The government and central banking are evil. I don't know what to think about everything else in the world that they impact. So that made me a lot more like libertarian, not just in the, hey, I'm a libertarian, but like I care, and I want to know more about it.
I think the Federal Reserve and the money thing probably doesn't get enough credit for how much it can wake somebody up, that particular issue, because I think, especially to a lot of us that have been around a little bit longer, like, I don't know, like I'll admit even I have gotten bored sometimes of the Federal Reserve talk. It's like, yeah, fiat money, I know. But I hearken back to my younger days when I was just starting to figure this stuff out. And it really is a mind-blowing moment when you realize that it is red pilling, because you realize that from the time you are a child and in school, they talk about money, they talk about savings accounts. It's never mentioned once. I mean, maybe in passing. I don't know. I don't think I ever heard the Federal Reserve mentioned one single time. Definitely not in high school. Probably not even in college. Maybe casually in an economics class, but not as anything of significance, just as something that's accepted. But when you realize that there's been this organization that has been controlling our money, and it's never been brought up before, that's the red pill moment, when you realize, wait, why has no one mentioned this entire thing that seems rather important, that a small cartel of banks controls our money and is granted a complete monopoly on it by the government, and we don't even talk about that? I mean,
right. Like I was a nerdy kid, but I was not like a finance geek. I remember feeling like very suave as a teenager when I would occasionally look at the Wall Street Journal if I found one. But this didn't, reading that book, it wasn't like part of a progression. I read it, I saw the cover, I thought it was interesting, and it blew my mind. And then when I started learning about Ron Paul and hearing him talk, it really brought the whole thing 360 degrees. Then I realized, okay, like that's not some conspiratorial stuff that I kind of got freaked out about. Like, it's very real. Here's a person in office talking about it, and he's getting hated and attacked by the other people that are running against him for it. But there's like this wave of young people who are really enthused and excited about it. That was really like, I really felt like I came home with libertarianism in that moment. It kind of took like 3 steps, I think, for me to really fully get it.
I think that's what took a lot of people from perhaps like a libertarian at heart or a libertarian as a hobby, something you think to yourself, to like, oh no, this is a real thing. These are real issues. This guy's on TV talking about it and being mocked. Like, this is something, and I'm not the only one. There's other people out here. And this is where I think a lot of people found their genesis from libertarian to part of a greater liberty movement. A lot of people don't like that term, whatever. But the point being, realizing there's something greater here. There is actually, whether someone wants to call it a movement or not, there is a movement. There's a large swath of people that see these things, that have these beliefs. And it wasn't just me sitting there thinking it to myself, reading Creature of Jekyll Island until 4 a.m. and just, shaking in my boots about all the evil machinations going on. There's actually something out there to connect with. And that sounds like that's something that happened to you as well.
Yep, that's pretty much, it's like first I get turned on to just the concept of it. Then I read the details, but I feel kind of in a bubble about it. And then I realize, like, you're not in a bubble. Mm-hmm. There's thousands, maybe millions of people who feel the same way. Now we're all finally starting to get connected and talk about, like, what the heck are we going to do about this?
So what did you do about it? What was your first step once Ron Paul kind of inspired you, like he did with so many people? What did you do first? For me, I was like, okay, I have to start talking. For me, I just started sharing YouTube videos for a while on my MySpace page, not to date myself too much, and eventually, of course, got into forming Lions of Liberty and going into the podcast. But what was your first act when you realized, this isn't just something I can think to myself? I have to actually go out there and do something about it.
Well, I started talking with a few more of my friends, but like selectively, like the friends who had already said they were libertarian or conservative, but sounded libertarian leaning, not just like knee-jerk, like social neocon people, and trying to get their opinion about it and perspective. And I realized my circle was not as broad politically as I thought. And I did feel, still a little bit isolated. It wasn't until I started getting active politically locally that I started meeting other libertarians who were really knew what was going on. One of the first things that I got really involved in was fighting against the LA County proposed ban on feeding homeless people. And it was a grassroots effort, but by a lot of grassroots groups. We got the ban, tabled. That's the term, basically, that they weren't going to actually vote on it and enact it. They brushed it aside. But during that political activism, I did meet other anarcho-capitalists. And it was like, oh, it's that word, that that I'm familiar with, but it's really harsh sounding. And I don't know a lot of other people who have any interest in that. And I got to meet some people. That was fascinating because most of the circles that I moved in were very left anarchist. So that was pretty cool. And then once I started working on the SB 277 referendum, which was my next big project, which we didn't ultimately get a success electorally, but for people who aren't in the know, California has mandatory vaccinations for anyone who goes to public or private school, and you can't deviate from it by one shot for your child.
Or private school. That's
private
interesting.
School. So if you believe in vaccination, but you're like, I don't think my kid needs every single shot all at once. I think I'm going to push them out by like 3 months so that they just don't get injected with everything at once. You can't go to school. You got to homeschool or move out of the state. You got to find a way around it. It's very
and there is no exception. Like you can't even get a medical exemption to that or a religious exemption.
No more religious exemptions. A medical exemption is very difficult to get because they track the numbers of exemptions that doctors give. So I won't say it's impossible, but it's nearly impossible because so many people want them and doctors just can't give them out or they'll get their license revoked if they do too many. So that got me plugged into the liberty movement. And I started to meet other like very serious, dedicated libertarians who were working on that. And that was, I think, in 2014 and 2015, when that was a big deal. And around the same time, I was also working on some cannabis initiatives, trying to get us full legalization in California. We have limited legalization here, and it's way better than nothing. But as people who tried to enter the industry will tell you, Prop 64 was not very helpful. Most people still have their products in warehouses from a year and a half ago saying, what the hell, man? Like, you told me that if I voted for this thing, I'd get a license, I'd pay a fee, and that hasn't happened because the bureaucracy of it is astounding. It was very poorly designed. So that was how I started to get more plugged in and really meet other libertarians and started talking to them about like what I had learned, It was kind of like one thing caused another thing, caused another thing, caused another thing.
So how did you go about kind of taking this, I guess, low-level, street-level activism and going from that to not only getting involved in the Libertarian Party locally, but I want to say quickly, I'm not sure how long exactly you were involved before you became chair of the Libertarian Party, but in Los Angeles. But what made you really seek out the path of the Libertarian Party specifically? Obviously, a lot of people have various different opinions, as you've aired out on this show, about what, the utility of the Libertarian Party or whether it makes sense to even use it at all. What drew you to the party and has continued to make you see this as such a valuable vehicle for promoting the ideas of liberty?
Sure. Well, initially when I got involved in the party, I was just going to local social meetups, and I thought of myself more as an anarcho-capitalist than somebody who would ever run for office. I'd had, my successes sort of on the outside of politics, like fighting against it. And the California party chair at the time, whose name is Ted Brown, he's a wonderful guy, said, "Oh, Angela, you should run for office in your congressional district." And I said, "Oh, no, I don't think I want to do that."
I got one of those calls from Ted once,
right?
Too. And I said the same thing. I said, maybe someday, but I'm not really looking.
Well, I said no, because it was a special election, and I said no again. And the third time I finally relented and said yes. And that was a really incredible experience because it was one of only 2 elections happening in the country at the time. It got a ton of media attention. We were all over CNN. It was a complete circus. I was the only libertarian running, and there were over 20 candidates on the ballot, plus write-ins. And I got people putting microphones in my faces and asking me what I thought about taxes. And, that mic didn't stay in front of my face for long. Oh, I think we should get rid of them. Oh, well, you're done and moving on.
Moving on, yeah.
But I got a taste for what you could do and how many people you can reach in the party structure.
Just by running, just by being there.
And it's because the Libertarian Party exists. So, love it or hate it, it exists, and it provides a valuable platform for people. And, it doesn't really matter like what flavor of libertarian you are. You can still, if you get the endorsement, if you got your name on the ballot, you get to talk, you get to say your piece and to the public. I had an interview with the LA Times, I was really shockingly included in the political process in that race. And after that, I decided I'm going to run for chair of LA County. I chaired my my little sub-county affiliate, we're all broken up into regions. I chaired that first. And I thought, I won that election. Let's try another one. LA was a complete mess when I inherited it. And I thought, I think I can do better than this. I think I run my little meetup group pretty well. I bet I can do the same thing at the county. And I did, I won that election. It was contentious. I won the next year's election, which was allegedly going to be really contentious, but I won the election really easily, and I won this past one, so I've won 3 times and we've made incredible progress. And that has really shown me that it is worthwhile because I've seen how it can get cleaned up at the local level and grow and go from being basically just like dead, to actually accomplishing stuff and getting in the news and backing candidates, having new members. And now we're fighting against the lockdowns and things like that. So we went from being sort of like dead to existent to, functional to now I feel like we're valuable.
I don't think people realize how small your local Libertarian Party chapter probably is. Even if you're in a major city, you would be surprised when you show up and you realize, oh, if I bring 5 friends, I can take this whole thing over in about a week. I mean, it's really can be that small. And especially when you're someone that is well-spoken like yourself, that can put sentences together that, not to disparage anybody. I've met a good number of amazing libertarians out there, especially out here in Los Angeles. Not everyone is eloquent. Let's just put it that way. It is actually a unique skill when you can get up in front of a room and speak to people. Not everyone has that skill.
Right. Some of the stereotypes are true. There's a lot of really articulate libertarians, but that's not all of us. And to give people an idea and understanding of what does it mean, what's small. So we've got maybe just shy of 11 million people in LA County. I got thousands of people on my email lists, and hundreds of those people will show up to events throughout the year, which is great. But I've got around 230 dues paying members who are active in the city of Los Angeles. Now, that's
pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's an impressive number.
That's the size of a lot of state parties throughout the Midwest. They have that many dues paying active members in their whole state. And I don't mean to put them down, and I have, a little bit of an advantage, but that sort of tells you, what it might be like at a county level in another state and how what I compare LA County to. I don't compare it to other city or county affiliates. I compare it to other state affiliates. So, just take that information and do with it what you will if you're thinking about getting active, in the party somewhere else in the country.
Now, I want to talk a little bit more about what you actually plan to do running for national chair. We've talked a lot about how you can impact things locally, whether it's by running for office locally or forming local organizations. Why are you looking to go from it's hard to call Los Angeles small, but a small chapter affiliate straight all the way to becoming the chair of LP National? Why did you not, want to first run for state chair or that sort of thing? Why specifically are you now running for the national chairmanship in 2022?
Sure. So there's a couple of reasons. And the one I would say, as far as not going from, county to state to national, I'm already basically at the state level because LA is that large. So just to give perspective, if someone from the Midwest was chairing a state and they're like, why don't you go to state? Well, no offense, but if you want to go there, my county affiliate is the same size as your state affiliate. And we probably do, the same level of activism every month. So I think, we're about on par with that. But what really inspired me to run and why I announced so early, because people have asked, why did you announce so early? It's only been 6 or 8 months since, our election. Well, it's because the National Party's absolute failure to rebuke the lockdowns. And I see people dropping, they're saying they don't want to renew, they don't want to join. And I'm trying to tell them, please hold on. I understand and I hear your pain and your frustration. I'm embarrassed too, but I'm going to run in 2022. So why don't you help me reform the party in a meaningful way rather than just bail on it and just kind of be on your own? Let's do this together. That's the biggest thing. But, I want to see the party put liberty at the forefront of its messaging again. And I think that this is, a big part of that because this is egregious offense against our really basic liberties. So this is foundational stuff. You know, can I go outside of my house? Can I work? Can I walk down the street at whatever hour I want? The answer is no in a lot of states. And I want the Libertarian Party to be a more welcoming place for libertarians because we both know that it's not that welcoming to everyone right now. I want that to change.
So it was specifically the lockdowns and the response, or I guess lack of response to the lockdowns, that really inspired you. No, I have to go get involved at the national level because you were not happy with the messaging that you were seeing out of the Libertarian Party at that particular level. So do you think that, like, I mean, for me personally, like, it's so obvious that this past year should be the libertarian moment. There is nothing more clear. I mean, we can debate. It's even more clear than the war on drugs, which to me is like the most clear egregious violation of civil liberties. This is even worse than that. I didn't think there could be anything worse than that would actually happen in my lifetime, but here we are, where we're not just telling people what you can put in your body. We're telling people if you can get together with your family. I mean, this and it's being accepted in mass. A lot of people aren't happy with it. Maybe some people complain about it, but they're complaining about it in the context of this is how it is. This is what the government can do. And now that it's been established that the government can do this at every level and get away with it, it's an awful precedent to set that there has been this much compliance overall, this little protest from this. And if the Libertarian Party is going to stand for anything at all, how could it not be? It almost seems like it's silly to talk about anything else but lockdowns at this point in time.
It does seem absurd. It seems absurd that the National Party in its messaging sort of steps around it awkwardly. And they're like, oh, well, you know, we've got a lot of other things going on in the country. And I'm like, not really, because we're not allowed to, because of lockdowns. And we should be talking about that. I don't want people to think that I'm just like, I'm running because I'm mad about their Twitter. I mean, I got to tell you, the Twitter and social media is horribly disappointing. And it seems like that's the whole purpose, is to just disappoint people on Twitter. That's what the party does. But there's a lot of other problems at national too. You know, there are some good people on the national XCOM. I'm not saying, oh, they all suck, chuck them in the trash, but it's the culture of the party. And the culture of the party at the national level is why we have this like embarrassing reaction to lockdowns and why we're afraid of offending people. You know, we sort of have this like golden calf of like worshiping and catering to progressivism instead of trying to create our own culture or be counterculture. We reflect culture. And that's not a good thing that the party should do. Shouldn't do it with progressivism, shouldn't do it with conservatism. Like, we should actually be libertarians. And we should be unapologetic about it. I mean, for crying out loud, there's a Libertarian Party in Cuba. Do you think they're the party of soft communism over there? Like, no, they're not.
I happen to know for a fact they are not at all. I mean, the libertarians in Cuba are hardcore. And if you want to talk about people that are brave, people that are actually standing up for something and when they're in true danger, I mean, the Libertarian Party people in Cuba, they literally get snatched from their homes and get disappeared. And then maybe they show up. Some of them get out. Maybe some don't. Like, these people are in true danger, and they speak out about it in a place like Cuba, where even as bad as things are here with lockdowns, I still don't feel like we're quite Cuba. And they're so incredibly brave. It makes it even more ridiculous that here in the United States there is not a more vocal opposition to specifically these lockdowns, especially at the national level. And I'm kind of curious, because I know a lot of people will be thinking, well, okay, the chairmanship is not really about messaging, or it's really not about being a figurehead of the party necessarily. It's more about sort of a process position. It's about being the most organized and really letting candidates be candidates and letting state affiliates be state affiliates. So how do you view the actual position of chair, either how it has been utilized, or how it should be utilized? Do you think that the chair should be more seen as like the leader of the party, as someone who should be kind of spearheading the messaging, or should they be somebody that's more behind the scenes and maybe having a guiding hand of sorts, but still sort of generally letting affiliates and candidates kind of do their own thing? Or maybe there's some kind of mix to this that I haven't really mentioned there.
Well, I think there is a mix. And I think that the chair needs to be using his or her position to get as much media attention as possible and framing that and controlling the narrative, of that media attention, and not just, answering every question the way that they want things answered. The chair needs to really take charge of messaging when they're reached out to by the media. There's a lot that the chair should be doing, and there's a lot that the chair does. And some of the stuff the chair does, the chair shouldn't be doing. I think that we need some restructuring because we're not oriented towards success. We're not really oriented towards anything at the national level. No one seems to know what the national party does. So then when you ask, what does the chair do? People are like, well, the chair runs meetings and the chair helps to populate certain committees. And, there's some administrative stuff the chair does. Okay, what does the party do? What does that actually mean? And then people are like, I have no idea. So, I could talk all about what I think the chair should and shouldn't do. People don't even have a framework for understanding of why that matters. We tend to recreate the wheel structurally at the national party level every 2 to 6 years because we're not successful. And we're not successful because we're not oriented towards success. We don't really know what we're doing. We're not trying to be successful. And we're not obviously oriented very well towards liberty right now, or we'd be speaking out against the lockdowns.
How do you define success when you're speaking about success, for the Libertarian Party in this way? Because a lot of people will look at success in different ways. Some people might look at success as getting the most votes for president, or some people might look at it as getting the most people in office across the country. Some people might just look at it as growing the party, or how many dues-paying members do we have. So what are your actual metrics? What do you mean when you say success?
I think that that's something that we all need to talk about a lot more often because no one agrees on the metric for success.
Yeah, I mean, imagine an actual business, like a company that forms their company, and there's people in the company that like talking about liberty or libertarian ideas or something, but there's no product, and there's no like, okay, we have to hit these sales goals or these goals by this time. So that's going to be reflected in how that company operates, and the company will probably last about 6 months because there's no actually metric of if there's success. So the money's just going to go down the drain. So do you see the LP National kind of operating in a similar way to like a business that has no business plan, and then every 2 years we try to change the business plan, but we never actually do?
Yeah, absolutely. Or we change it, but it's not a meaningful change, and so we don't see any meaningful improvement. I think for success, we need to see incremental growth. I don't think that we need to actually flood internal party membership with, millions of new libertarians, because those people are probably not going to be principled or understand. So we need to actually see incremental growth happen, like aggressive, but incremental growth happen over a series of a few years. And that'll tell us that we're doing things right and we're consistently doing things right, rather than just have like 1 or 2 blips that people like and then we screw up. We need to see people elected at local level office. Now, a lot of that is going to be dependent upon state and county parties. It can't all be at national. But one of the problems that national has is we do have resources for county and state level affiliates. A woman named Cara Schultz offers a lot of resources and she's good at it. A guy named Apollo offers a lot of resources and he's good at it. But when you have problems at the national surface level, like horrible messaging and combative and rude maybe staff members or committee members, when they're having all kinds of drama with the states, or the state is perceiving it that way, even if they're not, then those resources don't get utilized because the state and county parties, they have no interest or faith in the national party. So it's like we churn out all this stuff at the national level, it doesn't get used and no one cares. And then the people just poke fun at national and say, haha, you suck, your Twitter's awful, and that must be the end of it. We got to change that. And then we can actually see maybe a little bit more success at the county level and state level as people start to utilize national's resources. We did have several wins in 2020, but it wasn't as many as I'd hoped. California had some good wins. So we're getting there, right? But I don't know that I'd call it a success. We need more for it to be successful. And maybe we should do some analytics and studies and figure that out so that we actually can pin it to something meaningful rather than just guessing wildly in the dark. I don't know that we have developed any of those resources and shared them with the states. So how about sharing metrics for success and defining them? What else? Messaging. When our messaging is better, then we're going to get better feedback. And that's a pretty good metric for success, right? You're looking at negative and positive feedback throughout the years. And when we get that, it helps to grow things through a grassroots way at the local level. And that is, isn't that what this is about? We know that our next presidential candidate isn't going to get, 60% of the vote. So can't we use it to help, in another way? I think that would be a really good metric for success.
Hey there, kitty cats. I need to take a quick little break to remind you that if you love coffee, and I need coffee to get through interviews at this point because, let's face it, I just passed 40. I need a little extra kick in my step, and I get that kick from our good friends at Lorenzotti Italy. These guys have some premium coffee blends at an amazing price. You want to check them out at lorenzotti.coffee. That's lorenzotti.coffee, not .com. And what I love about these guys is that they aren't just fine coffee connoisseurs. They are also not just entrepreneurs themselves, but they are out there helping other people start their own businesses. They help people procure equipment, financing, and everything else they need to start their own coffee shops. So please do check out our friends at Lorenzotti Italy. Don't forget to use discount code LIONS for 10% off your order. How much do you think that the chair specifically should be taking the lead on messaging now? Obviously, we both know the former chair, Nicholas Sarwark, pretty active in messaging in his own way. Whether you liked it or not, no one can say he wasn't putting his opinions and thoughts out there all the time.
Right.
How much of that was filtered into like the Libertarian Party social media? I don't really know necessarily, but no doubt that Nick was very vocal and got into a lot of a lot of opinionated spats would be a very nice way to put all of that. But personally, I mean, I haven't seen too much one way or the other at all from Joe Bishop Henchman in terms of like his personal opinions being out there. I probably don't really know much of his personal opinions on much of anything, and I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's just definitely a stark difference I see between this current chair and the last chair. How do you feel that the chair should be approaching messaging? I don't want to say should it be more like Nick. I just mean more like Nick, not in terms of what he's saying, but more like Nick in terms of should you be putting your opinions out there a lot and connecting them to Libertarian National, or should it be more like Joe, who seems to be more just operating behind the scenes, doing his thing, not being really bold and out there with his own positions?
Well, my personal...
And maybe he is, and I just haven't seen it. I mean, it's possible, but I haven't seen too much that has stood out to me.
He's not. I don't have a lot of, terrible things to say about the guy. I think he's a perfectly nice person from my limited interactions with him. But I will tell you that the chair has a lot of control over the social media. He helps to populate that social media committee. I believe he also appoints the chair of that committee, at least in a temporary fashion. I need to go back.
I always wondered how this works. So it's an actual committee of people that collectively sort of work on social media?
Yes. And we don't know who makes what tweets. And I believe that there's some sort of NDA, I've been spending a tremendous amount of time digging through and reading about all of this stuff and talking with people on the national committee to understand really like what the problems are. Don't think that I'm just like a shoot from the hip. Oh, I think I'm just going to go up there and run things because I know better. Like, I think anybody who wants to go and, try to wrangle this beast needs to actually understand what's going on. And this is one of the criticisms that I have of how the party is being run right now is you see committees that are populated with people who are not doing a good job. And we're getting really negative feedback. And it's kind of the same crap that we've been having for the previous 4 years. So why don't we learn from our mistakes and do something better? And that is something that the chair has some control over. If you don't want to be out there in the front doing all the messaging, okay, like people have different skill sets, but put people in who are good at their job, people who are good at messaging, not just people who are going to parrot your ideas about, like your personal ideas. If sometimes your ideas suck, right? And that's okay. I'm not an engineer. Don't have
not my ideas. My ideas are great, but
right?
A generic person out there possibly.
It's like sometimes we're like not everyone is good at everything. I suck at basketball, and maybe there are people who suck at social media messaging. And it might be because they just are, that's not their skill set, but it might also because, you've got terrible ideas. So it is what it is. I definitely want to clean that up. And, I got to say that the chair does have quite a bit of control over that. And the chair controls maybe a third of what goes on at the committee level. And committees are how we run the party. I know it sounds annoying and boring, but it's true. And, the chair has a good say how some of that stuff goes down. They get to appoint a lot of committee members, and then other people get voted on and so forth.
So would you look to populate a social media committee, for example, with I'm trying to think about how you might go about populating a committee in a way that, you want to get an output of better messaging. But I think what a lot of people are going to be concerned about, and you've heard these criticisms, I know, because you've been very active with the Mises Caucus, and there's a lot of people out there that will say like this is why I don't want Angela McArdle to be chair, because I don't quite see things the same way. I'm a libertarian, but I don't view messaging the same way as the Mises Caucus. I don't think that they should all come taking over and have Michael Malice running the social media or whatever crazy thing they're saying now. I have my own take on libertarianism, or my own take on libertarian messaging. Like, what would you say to people like that are libertarians, that hold maybe the same beliefs that you and I do, but they look at messaging very differently, and they don't like the idea of a certain subsect of the party or what have you coming in and just sort of doing things quote unquote their way?
Sure. Well, I'd ask those people, what's your metric for success? If we want to put out very safe beltway messaging that doesn't offend anyone, does that grow the party? I think that it gets us votes in election cycles when we have two other insane people on the political stage and we are the sane choice. But I don't believe that is what grows our party and what keeps people's interests. And I'm sure that we could do all kinds of studies about that, and that may happen. That may be something that I do before we get into the really the close couple of months before the chair race in 2022. Is you're probably going to see a study put out about how libertarians should approach messaging and what success it gets. I want our messaging to generate success. I want us to get new libertarians into the party. I want us to pick the low-hanging fruit of people who have been libertarians for a long time and haven't joined the party. I want our messaging to be geared towards that and oriented towards that first before I start trying to go after progressives and neocons, because those people are far less likely to join our party and help us. And we need help. We need help at the local level. We need help at the state level. We need help at the national level too. But I think as we've all seen from the storming the Capitol thing, we're not going to have any kind of attempted coup takeover of the White House with a grassroots movement. If you want change to happen, it's going to happen locally. And so we need to grow our parties with libertarians.
Let's say that you are elected chair in 2022 in Reno, Nevada. We'll certainly be there. The Lions of Liberty contingent will certainly be there. What would be your strategy in terms of, because one thing you talked a lot about is that the chair should be out there as in the media, getting as much media as possible. How would you personally, how do you think you'd be able to utilize your personal skill set and your personal history here in Los Angeles and everything you've learned over the years? How would you be able to utilize that to actually get media attention, to actually get yourself on, say, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, representing the Libertarian Party and speaking libertarian values, when you know that the messaging you're going to be giving goes completely counter to the messaging that they want to put out there? I'm not even sure if any of these networks have aired a single anti-lockdown person. I don't know. I don't watch them, but I would be suspicious if someone had claimed that they had. So how would you plan to actually get that messaging out there to the public, actually get that media attention while still maintaining your principled on libertarian pointing message? Wow, that was I just mauled that last sentence, but you know what I'm saying. I
got the idea. Okay, so first of all, never beg for attention. Can you think of any time in your life when someone has just completely ignored you, mistreated you, and you begged and begged and begged for their attention and you got respect? Never. That's not.
It's hard to respect yourself when you do that.
Yeah.
And for starters, yeah.
It's embarrassing, and people make fun of us for that. So we don't beg the mainstream media for attention.
Well, this is what I hated about the whole let her speak thing with Joe Jorgensen. Please, 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 corporate media. Please, 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 crony capitalist organization owned by the Republicans and Democrats. Can we please participate in your completely rigged game? And the answer will be only if we see a way that it benefits us, and we don't. So no. And how did that benefit anybody by us having that messaging out there of, like you just said, begging for attention for months?
It was cringy. Pathetic. It didn't work. As the county chair, me and Rachel Johnson, who's the vice chair of LA County, we planned the event. Rachel did most of the work in LA on that event. We did the Let Her Speak caravan thing. I didn't like it, but I put in the work and I was like, all right, fine. You know what? Let's see how it goes. It didn't get media attention. You know what did get media attention is when I had the first big anti-lockdown protest. There were like about 750 people at this thing that they showed up at Los Angeles City Hall, and we had a big car caravan and everything. And the flyers that I sent out had a little note on it that said encouraging people to wear masks to avoid police detection. And the media caught that. And
I love that angle on it.
They were like, what?
We are encouraging you to wear masks, not for the reason everyone else wants you to.
What? So the media contacted me immediately. They were like, Angela, this is Spectrum One News, which is like the local CNN. It's very progressive. And people who are active in local politics watch it. And they're like, we need you to be on. We need to interview you. And so I was very prepared for the interview. It went very well. Were they aggressive with me? Yes. They weren't awful to me, though. You just have to know what to expect, which is another reason that I would like to, do a little bit better job that I think is happening at National now, is because I have some practice at this. And, we went back and forth about whether or not death rates matter, or what this matters, what that matters. I talked about the untold consequences, the unforeseen effects of the lockdown, how it was hurting all the people that they care about, poor people, homeless people, undocumented people. And then they got to, is it really true that you told people to wear masks to avoid police detection? And I just said, yes, absolutely. And then I launched into like unreasonable searches and, like how you have a right to protest and the police shouldn't be targeting you for exercising your First Amendment rights. And they were just like, wow. All right. Well, that's it. It worked.
This is something else that's something libertarians need to be the leaders on here, because what I'm seeing now, like especially out of the media, I mean, like I think it was USA Today that had some article or post that it had a picture of people that were protesting at the Capitol and said, help us identify these people. Like the media is actively trying to dox people who are protesting something. That's not like they're saying, look, here's someone who we saw commit a murder, help us identify him. This is people that are just seen at a protest. It doesn't mean they entered the Capitol. It doesn't mean they did anything illegal. And now we just have to identify them, which will possibly cost them their job, possibly put them in bodily harm, because there's a lot of crazy people out there that might see their name in USA Today and go track them down because people are freaking nuts about politics right now. So, I mean, how do we fight against this kind of level of insidiousness that has permeated not just the government, the media, almost all aspects of culture? How can we actually fight this? Because this is just one of the scariest trends I see. Laws are one thing, but this is cultural now. This is being led by the media, and maybe even more so than it is by the government. Right.
We need to speak out and say that we uphold the freedom of speech, and we also need to say that we respect people's right to privacy. Because, government issues aside, culturally, I respect people's right to privacy. I'm not going and peering in people's windows, with my telescope. Oh, what are you doing in there? Well, technically I'm not on your right. Technically I'm not on your private property. Ha ha ha. That is awful behavior. And that's what the media does. And, I get so aggravated, and I'm sure a lot of people do, when libertarians will say, well, actually, that's not an app violation, so it's okay.
It's a private company, as they're being shuffled into, privately owned, concentration camp.
Right. I'm like,
cars.
Hey, you're right. It's technically allowed by the non-aggression principle. It's still atrocious behavior, and we shouldn't support it. We don't have to, pat Twitter on the back when they ban people that we don't like. Don't celebrate that, and then what we pat Twitter on the back when they ban us. Yay. I'm glad a private company has kicked me out, even though I've been, what is going on?
I have seen libertarians, I don't want to put them in quotes. I'm not a one true Scotsman. If you believe libertarian stuff, fine, I'll believe you. But I've seen libertarians, maybe I'm doing air quotes, maybe I'm not, actually support like Amazon taking down Parler and cheering this thing as the free market working. And I just think, like, look, even if you agree with the action, please don't be as pathetically, not able to actually see the full scope of a scenario as unnuanced as to actually look at that as a free market action. Give me a fucking break. Like, don't act like Amazon, Twitter are just your average mom and pop privately owned business. Maybe by the letter of the law they are, but come on. Stop it, people. And to actually support that action, it's one thing to say, well, I don't like it or that, but I don't like the people on Parler, but that maybe they have some right to do it. But to actually like cheer it and actively be happy about it, be happy about descending this country and the culture into further chaos, because that's all that's going to happen by pushing, even if they are all racists, even if Parler was all racists, all that banning racists would do is prove to the racists that these things that they're complaining about, the biases in the system that they feel are targeting them now, are justified. It's just confirming everything. When you ban Alex Jones from all platforms, you're confirming that Alex Jones must be onto something. Just like when you ban racists, or I shouldn't even say racist, but ban people who might even have some kind of undesirable view, you're just confirming their views and making sure they get further entrenched. So no matter what your perspective on the rights of Amazon to stop hosting Parler, or the rights of Apple to take them off their store, to cheer it is just idiotic.
Yeah. I mean, you have the right to walk down the street and walk up to random people and insult them to their face. That's gross behavior. And that's sort of, it's sort of... And
if one of those people punches you in the face, it will be an NIP violation. But I will still think, maybe you should have seen that coming.
Right. And we should see coming the fact that a lot of these institutions are going to come after us. We're just a lot smaller. And obviously, there's already been plenty of libertarians and libertarian pages and organizations, too, that have been kicked off of social media. There was a great culling that happened, I think, in 2018, right before the midterm elections. So it happens every year. We should anticipate it, and we should start speaking out against it. Hey, you know what? We know that you technically have a right to do this, but it's bad for the country. It's bad for the culture. We should stop dehumanizing people and trying to ostracize everyone just because we disagree with them. I saw two things. One of my friends said that he thought the good response to that was, I'm sorry that you think so poorly of your own message that you can't do a better job with your messaging about libertarianism. I thought that was a pretty good way to put it for these libertarians who are, championing deletion from, of our president from Twitter. I saw another friend who was a progressive saying that conservatives need to be punished, all of them. We have to punish them for aligning themselves with Donald Trump and for not disavowing, like a laundry list of Republican things, not even white nationalism and that kind of fringe stuff, but just conservative values. We have to punish them. And I thought, like, when in history has it ever worked to our benefit where we took a group of people and outright punished them and ostracized them and ridiculed them? Like, that was kind of what happened with Nazi Germany. Like, Germans, they didn't really do great in World War I. They weren't on a good side. And it's hard to say who was. That war was a mess. But then we really stuck it to them. And they got really pissed off and did that whole Nazi Germany thing not long after. So maybe we should kind of tone down on our revenge. I don't think it's a good way. I don't think it's good for our country.
Especially when you had 70 million people, vote for Donald Trump. Probably more people the outside observer is going to call you and me a conservative. So now we're part of that too. I mean, as far as they're concerned, as far as people from that side of things are concerned, we're exactly the same as someone who actually did support Donald Trump, someone who actually, did go out and vote for him. So combine the 70 million with all the people that they're going to lump into it, no matter what, we're literally talking about half the country at this point.
Yeah, it's not a good look. I don't like what that bodes for our future. So I would like to see us not champion censorship, revenge, punishment. And I would say that I feel the same way about that for internal party stuff too. A big concern that people have with the Mises Caucus and my involvement with them. And by the way, I am very involved in the Mises Caucus. I'm not sort of involved. I'm very committed. I'm just putting that out there because, in case anyone's uncertain, I'm going to say I'm owning everything that I'm about. I'm not a person of secrets. But I don't want to kick people out of the party. I want to radicalize everyone. If you're a pragmatist and you're on the fence and you're unsure about messaging and you think that we need to be more Gary Johnson-like and reasonable and appeal to people, I want to tell you that we're in a post-rational society right now. And I don't think that we're going to have a very good chance of reasoning with people who hate us. And we need to radicalize, and we need to be radical and bold and unapologetic in our messaging. And I want you on board with that. I don't want to kick people out. I want to bring them further in, bring them back into the party.
Yeah, so because that is something I hear a lot is people saying they don't like the language coming out of the people like the people at the Mises Caucus or people like Dave Smith that are saying we're taking over, we're coming to take over. So what you're saying is you don't mean take over as in kick everybody out. What you want to do is take over the messaging and influence the people in the party. You want them there. You want them as part of it, as much of a part of it as now. You want them more a part of it, but you want to influence them and you want them to be radicalized. You want that radical messaging coming from all aspects and all people within the party as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I mean, we have people who are prags in the party who work really hard and they do good work. I don't want to disturb that work. For people who are running candidate trainings and things like that, heck no, I don't want to kick you out of the party. I want people to use your resources, better and get more out of them. But in order to do that, we need radical messaging that's going to reach people and wake them up. And then there are going to be more people who are interested in, hey, I want to take that training. I want to take that workshop. I want to run for office. That's what we need to do. And I don't want people to be scared of being a libertarian. That's not good for our party culture.
It needs to feel fun. It needs to feel fun again. Because I'll tell you what, when the Ron Paul stuff started happening, when he was getting fired up at the debates, and I was connecting with so many people, sharing his YouTube videos, seeing the money bombs, and watching the money come in, and just seeing that excitement, that are some of the best memories of my life. Are just being alone in my apartment, looking at my computer as people cheered at Ron Paul rallies, as people chanted "End the Fed," and as I connected with people in real life from that. That was so fun. And yeah, it was disheartening when you saw a lot of the vote totals come in. It was disheartening when you saw him robbed of his speaking slot at the RNC. It was disheartening when you see all these things happening at caucuses. It's so obvious all the various ways, or when he gets screwed by the media. But that's part of the fun. That's part of what brings you all together. And yeah, maybe there's no doubt, if you want to get involved in the Libertarian Party and get involved in races and get involved in activism, you're going to face disappointment. You're going to. I don't care how low your expectations are going in, you're going to find disappointment because you're going to run into walls. You're going to run into people that just won't hear your message. That's just part of it. You're going to have to deal with that. But this is something that we all need to get excited about, because when you're excited, when you're having fun along the way, you're not really caring about the disappointment. Yeah, it comes and it happens, but you're moving on because you're having such a damn blast doing it. And that's something that I think you've done such a great job of out here in Los Angeles, is trying to make things fun. Having events with bands and events where Brian and I come and kind of do a comedy shtick of sorts. I mean, going to that stuff is so fun, and you need to translate that message into all levels of the Libertarian Party, where someone might get involved with an event because it looks fun, not even because it looks like it's libertarians. Like I said, that's one of the things you've done so well out here in Los Angeles, and maybe that's something we can find a way to translate to the higher levels, to the state parties, to the national messaging. Make this whole damn thing fun again.
Yes. I want to see the Ron Paul Revolution 2.0 pop off within the Libertarian Party. I want people to have fun and be passionate again. I want people sure, when we lose, it's sad, but it's sort of expected. But when we win, it's so satisfying and so much fun. And I would like people to really feel that experience, and even if we can't win every race, every election, if we just win, a tiny sliver of them, for more people to get involved in that and for us to really coalesce and rally behind those wins, I think would be just incredibly uplifting. One of the things I got to hand it to the Mises Caucus for is, say what you want about it if you're on the outside looking in, but our internal caucus culture is pretty great. We get along really well. We are very active. We are fundraising. We're funding candidates, and we don't actually have a lot of drama. I think that we could do that at the national level. And I think that it's going to take a shift in leadership, but I do think it's possible. And I think making things more fun would probably help that quite a bit.
Indeed. I think we could all use a little more fun, especially with how everything's been the past year, and everything going on at every level doesn't look good for liberty on the surface. But guess what? Where there's darkness, there is room for light. And I hope that people like us are going to bring the light, bring the fun back to this thing. So, Angela, thank you so much for joining me and talking about your chair campaign. I'm sure as this process goes on, I plan to do what I've done over the years, host debates and that sort of thing. So this conversation will certainly be continuing quite a bit over the next year and a half or so until that convention in Reno. Before I let you go, Angela, I want you to just go through the little roundup of how people can find you, how they can find you on social media, how they can reach out to you if they're interested in getting involved in your campaign or with the Mises Caucus, whatever you got to do. Shoot.
Great. So if you want to get involved at the local level, hit us up at the LA County website. It's lplac.us. If you want to get updates from me, you can go to angelamcardle.com. I have a Patreon, and you can find information on that and on social media on my website. And I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Angela McArdle. You can usually find my campaign stuff at Angela for Congress. That's me.
Angela McArdle, it's been a blast, and hopefully I'll see you in person soon here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Take care, Angela. Keep up the great work. Keep on roaring.
Thank you.
All right, my Liberty kitty cats, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Angela McArdle. It's great to finally give her the full Marc Clair Lions of Liberty interview treatment after I've known her for a couple of years now out here in Los Angeles. Very excited to see what comes out of her chair run starting really early. Things are heating up really early here in the Libertarian Party. And in this interview, we kind of touched on, you guys have probably heard by now, Dave Smith has been out there talking about sort of taking over the party along with the Mises Caucus. And one person, now, as many of you know, over the last few months, I've hosted several debates with Dave Smith where he is taking on some of his online critics. Andy Craig and Pride member Archie Flower were his two opponents in those debates. Well, this month I've got a different kind of opponent lined up for Dave. This actually was someone who reached out to me about this debate, and he had an idea for the debate based on what Dave has been talking out as far as trying to take over the Libertarian Party, create a more libertarian message, kind of bring the Ron Paul movement fully into the Libertarian Party. And that was former state senator, I should say, Eric Brakey of Maine. Now, Eric Brakey has been on this program a couple of times, as of course Dave Smith has as well. And Eric approached myself and Dave about this debate because Eric is still strategically believes in the idea of working within the GOP, working within the Republican Party. He thinks all of the liberty movement energy would be much more effective channeling through the Republican Party, whereas Dave is putting all his efforts and his energy in channeling that same Ron Paul movement, the energy of it, into the Libertarian Party. So this debate is going to be about which strategy is more prudent, which strategy is the right one to take, which is the best path forward for that Ron Paul liberty movement. So that debate, I would say it'll be airing next week. The truth is, it already happened. And I always stream these things, our big interviews, big debates. I stream those live to the Lions of Liberty Pride secret Facebook group for our patrons only for as little as $5 a month. You can get access to all of our exclusive bonus content, early access to debates like that one. We also have Conspiracy Corner, Degenerate Gamblers, Drunken Howie Story. There are just so many bonus shows that we do. We really make sure that our patrons get their money's worth. Of course, as you go up the tiers, we have people at various levels who are getting even better perks, merchandise, discounts on merchandise, the Nittany level, $50 a month. You can take over an episode of the show and become a producer as we do our Nittany special each and every month. Of course, the perks just get better and better, but for only $5, just a measly $5 less than a latte at Starbucks, you can support the greatest libertarian variety show on earth right here at Lions of Liberty. Of course, the variety that comes from my compatriots, my fellow Lions of Liberty, including Brian McWilliams, who just smacks you straight up in the face every single week with his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty on Electric Liberty Land, while John Odermatt wraps things up not on Fridays, no, on Thursdays now with his new show, which is also a continuation of his old show, but new name, new logo, new intro, new everything. It's Finding Freedom. Finding Freedom is now the third show here on Lions of Liberty every single Thursday, so you can get that last shot of liberty, that last dose you need right before you get into your weekend. You can start your weekend a little bit earlier now that you've got Lions of Liberty on Thursdays. You get all these shows for free, my friends. 3 shows for the price of one. Price is free all you got to do is smash the heck out of that subscribe button on your favorite podcatcher, whether it's Apple. And if you're over at Apple, please do leave us a 5-star rating and a great review. As much as I can't stand some of the moves Apple has made lately, they do control the algorithms that also filter out to a bunch of different podcast apps. So it really does help us when we get those 5-star ratings and those great reviews, specifically on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, that's about all I got, my friends. And that debate with Dave Smith and Eric Brakey will air 1 week from today or right now if you're one of our amazing patrons. Again, that's patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Until next time, my friends, live long and live free. Is this thing on? Is this thing on? Are you still with me? That's right. I am still here. Are you still here? If you're still here, one of two things are possible. You're one of our biggest fans who listens to every single show to the end, including past the outro music, or you fell asleep and maybe you just woke up and were like, what did I fall asleep during a podcast? What happened here? Either way, I want to let you guys know about something that's been going on lately that I'm sure you're aware of. This what's been going on social media. We see a lot of people being deplatformed from Twitter, from Facebook, and now we saw Parler has been completely deplatformed, at least temporarily, off the internet altogether, thanks to Amazon and Apple and Google Play. So things are getting crazy right now. We want to make sure that we can stay in touch with our patrons. So we're going to take a few steps so we can capture emails, phone numbers, and that kind of thing a little more efficiently. But in the meantime, we have created an alternate Facebook group. We have, of course, on Facebook, our Lions of Liberty Forum, as well as our Lions of Liberty Pride secret Facebook group. We started a Lions of Liberty Forum on MeWe. That's M-E-W-E, MeWe. I am also on there. So if you're looking for some alternatives, that is where we have decided to at least plant a mini flag for now. Now, as we know, even sites like MeWe are probably not safe ultimately. So we're going to be coming up with some solutions in the meantime. One of our great listeners, Dan Roberts, has helped to set us up something over on like I guess it's called like the Fediverse of social media. So we'll try to get that information out to you we're kind of in the testing phase with that now too. So we are looking for alternatives. We are actively looking for alternatives. So we just wanted to let you know that. But for now, find me on MeWe, find the Lions of Liberty Forum on MeWe as well.